For years, eyewitnesses have been seeing mysterious upright canine creatures that they cannot describe, and has left many mystery into the world. It is unknown what lurks around into these creatures, but with sketches, drawings, and thousands of accounts, the mystery is. Join us as we talk about Dogman, the most terrifying cryptid in the world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the 10 Tales of Dogman. Tonight's episode, folks, we have another one, amazing one, coming from the East Coast. We're talking some New York Dogman encounters. We have Al Santiaga coming on the show tonight. You know him from Dogman Encounters, as well as the founder of the Bronxville Paranormal Society. And then we have Bryan Bowden coming on the show as well. We have two amazing guests. Bryan, of course, the lead of the New York State Dogman chapter of the NADP, as well as another paranormal researcher as well. Both men have amazing backgrounds in the paranormal field as well in the crypto field, especially in the Dogman realm. Al, Bryan, thank you guys for coming on the show tonight. How are you guys doing this evening?
Thank you for having us, Chris.
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's a good evening so far.
That's good. Very good. I'm glad. So, folks, guys, I just want to ask you, where did it all begin with you guys, with both paranormal and the Dogman world?
Ooh, big question. I'll go first.
I met Bryan through another group called the UFO Roundtable, and we just kind of hit it off like brothers from another mother. And I was having a lot of paranormal experiences, and my brother, who's a parapsychologist, said I should put a team together, and Bryan was the first man I reached out to. And one by one, I went through the roundtable group and picked my guys from my team, and that's how it all started. That's how the ball got rolling with the BPS team.
Yeah, it was very interesting. It's kind of cool when you go to some of these live events, which when I met Al at the UFO Roundtable, that came off for me. It started off as a bet or a dare. I dare you to go to one of these things. I said, sure. I said something closer, so it was very local for me. And Al was there. Al's always very vocal. Al had a good head on his shoulders. I've always done independent investigations for my own curiosity, for the most part. And we both still do independent as well as together, and we bounce off of each other. But when he invited me to the group, I'm like, yeah, I was all in at that point. And we've been doing this for a bunch of years now, and pretty solid. I think we make up the bulk of the solidness for the BPS.
Oh, absolutely. And, you two have amazing backstories and even in paranormal. And, I just want to say thank you guys for all you do in the fields. Seriously, I've watched you guys and listened to your stories and, of course, what you guys have to say in various interviews, not just Vic Cundiv's show as well, but even in other paranormal shows as well. So thank you guys again for your research and what you guys have contributed to both fields.
Well, you're welcome. I'm a firm believer of boots on the ground. That's my forte, and that's what it's all about for me. Boots on the ground investigations.
Yeah, when we go out, we do our research, we do due diligence, we get as much information as possible. We do have a lot of friends in this industry, and it is an industry, and we confer with people. But basically, research, plan, go boots on the ground, assess, review the evidence. And then we go back out. And I'm with Al. There's plenty of people out there that they call themselves researchers, but they're basically authors. And they sit in, cubicles and what have you, and they mine the computer and the internet. And that's fine and dandy. But to be brutally honest, I think you have to really be out there in the field to really get a sense of what's going on investigation-wise. And we do both. So it's different.
I agree sincerely. I mean, I feel that if you're not a true researcher, and this is just my opinion as well, if you're not out in the bush, as they call it, but and more importantly, if you're not out in the field in paranormal context as well, because it is, of course, after all, if for what we do as researchers and, of course, going out there, it's important to do such thing. And other than that, though, as well, it's also, for me, with when it comes to the subject of tonight, which is Dogman, it's a very huge part in the field. So going into Dogman, where did it all begin? Where did you guys first learn Dogman? Where did the term begin? Where did it all start for you guys?
For me, Al. Al and Vic Cundiff. Sorry, I had to throw it out there. So go for it, Al. But it started for me with Al going, you got to hear this. You got to check this out. You got to check this out. And that's where it started for me.
What about you, Al? Where did it all start for you with Dogman?
Oh, Vic for sure. Vic got me hooked. He got me hooked, and scared the living daylights out of me. And I just was obsessed with it. I really was obsessed with it, and so we had to go out and we had to start researching. And be careful what you look for. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, it's really funny. Like when he approached me and he said, you got to listen to the show. And I started listening to Vic Cundiff show, which I think is a great, fantastic show. And Vic's a great guy too. Very professional what he does. But I started listening to this stuff, and then I started hearing people that are out in the field with military backgrounds, people in government, and they've got to be vague about it, and they've got more to lose than gain by talking about it. So, things started adding up like, there's no way there's werewolves. Like, come on, you got to be kidding me. But with all these people coming forward, and not you're just your normal everyday person, the people that have more to lose than gain. So I started researching it, and I'm like, it just blew me away. Of like, you got to be kidding me. There's a 12-foot real werewolf out there. And the evidence started coming in. Once you start opening up that Pandora's box, and Al opened it for me. He gave me the key. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And for the subject, too, a big credit goes out to Vic Cundiff. Most importantly, a very professional individual. But, of course, as well, in the field of research, and you mentioned about when you go out into the field, it's where it really starts out with. Now, what I want to ask you guys, what is it that you look for when you're out in the field? Like, what is your main source? Like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a Dogman in particular, or are you looking for evidence like paw prints, claw marks, hair?
Well, when we go out, we look for evidence. We do look for the tracks, but more than that, we look for the wood structures and the archways and the X's, because I've noticed over the years of being out in the field, not only do the Sasquatches do this, but the Dogmen do it as well. They may add like a scratch on a tree, like a bear or something like that, but it's just my theory is when you see the archways, it's inviting you in. When you see the X's, it's telling one or the other that this is our turf and you're not allowed to come in here. You know what I mean? And I think they both use the same kind of signs as far as tree structures and stuff like that goes.
Yeah, they're very similar. But what I've noticed from being out in the field and seeing these things is, I think your Sasquatch going out and putting up signs for its clan will have more of those. It'll be archways, and there are X's too, but it's a different type of X. It's more plant based. When I'm getting that Dogman feel from what I'm seeing around me, these are things that are like tree limbs, like trees being raised up really high off the ground and making like a tree umbrella. Something that's pretty much telling you that there's something out here that's extremely large that can lift trees up and warning you straight up, don't come over this way. Sasquatch is a little bit more, I'm not going to say inviting, but they're a little bit more subtle about their approach and from my, viewpoint.
Definitely, and I like both your standpoints on it. I think it's important, and what a lot of people quite don't understand, in my opinion at least, and I know you guys feel it the same way to an extent, is when you're in the territory of a dogman, you know for a fact it's going to be rough because these things are menacing. They're intimidating creatures, and the fact that you want to stand in a position of going out there to look for them is crazy for a lot of people out there, but it also adds to the research, but more importantly, you go out there and you showcase what you can find, even if it's a hair sample or a paw print. And one thing that's interesting, I want to ask you guys about this because I know that you both discussed paranormal and the whole controversy surrounding flesh and blood and of course the supernatural presence of a dogman. Do you guys believe that these creatures are flesh and blood or supernatural?
I believe they're flesh and blood. I've heard episodes not only on Vic's show but other shows as well where they've been shot and killed. I don't know if there's doorways or portals that they go in and out of. I couldn't say that there is. I think they're more flesh and blood.
Yeah, I do believe that there's a flesh and blood component to these creatures, but I also been researching a lot about a lot of underground tunnel systems that we have in the Northeast, specifically Pennsylvania, where you do get a lot of dogman sightings. There's extensive cave systems that go from Pennsylvania to down into along the Appalachian Trail into the down south, goes into New York State, goes to Jersey, goes to Ohio. But there's also this mystical type of side to this from some of the research and some of the stories where people just they stare in these creatures' eyes and they just kind of have nightmares forever. It feels like there's a connection there. I think there is a connection between the actual dogmen and their clan or their pack. It seems that if you do something to one, then everyone somehow knows that you're the one. I don't know how they're transmitting that information, but it seems that there's some kind of connection that way. And I also feel that with these creatures, and I never would have said this before until I started and I had certain experiences, there's been talk about them being able to go into different dimensions. And I thought people were crazy when they said that. But we had an experience with some cryptid. I'm going to say more Bigfoot, but we can get into a den that we found later on. But this creature was able to travel like almost 1.5 miles in under a second. And the only way I can think that being possible in the pitch black is they're able to open up some kind of doorway and travel from point A to point B quickly. And I think these dogmen themselves are so elusive that they must have some kind of way of traveling where they're not seen.
That's a good analogy on that, actually, too, because not a lot of people talk about that. And I know it's a controversial topic to discuss on the flesh and blood and supernatural instinct because it is, of course, in the ways of some people, they are seen as a little demonic, but then again, they're also seen as flesh and blood. Now, for your research, what would be, and this is where we're going to go into the encounters part of it, but when you research, when you guys are out in the field, do you guys get the airy presence of feeling of being watched, even if it may not necessarily be the instinct of a dogman watching you guys?
Yes, absolutely. I will say just one more word on the last subject about being supernatural. I will say this: as much as I believe that they are flesh and blood, the very first time that I seen the dogmen, I felt it put me in a hypnotic trance. And I was actually locked in on them and like this hypnotic trance for maybe a minute or two before I broke out of it. So there is something more to them than just flesh and blood. I really truly believe that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in plenty of situations, and be it. We're just going to cryptid in general. And when I'm saying cryptid in relation to this program, I'm pretty much talking dogmen or Bigfoot. There was one investigation we had recently fairly recently, we were doing a cemetery, and Al was picking up on it quicker than I was picking up on it. I had too many things going on at once, and it was till later on that we really kind of picked up on that something was watching us. We did come across, and Al would say, there's a veil was lifted, and Al starts seeing signs everywhere, and then I start seeing them. But we did see this structure that was made again with large trees, not tree limbs, trees, and it was raised pretty high up. And we started to investigate it, and I was going well ahead of Al and deeper into the woods, and he stopped me immediately. He goes, "No, Bryce, stop. I just feel like we're being drawn into a trap." With that being said, I did want to continue forward, but you know what? Sometimes you've got to take the gut feeling of a third party or your buddy, and I retreated. And later on that night, it was probably the best call. But there is some kind of presence there that says something's going on. Something's not right. A lot of times you'll get it when you're out someplace and you don't hear crickets or frogs or anything. In plenty of locations like Nuclear Lake, there should be some kind of form of wildlife. And when wildlife shut down like that, they know something's there. And it's usually a big predator.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting about in terms of that, and Nuclear Lake too. I was actually going to ask you guys about Nuclear Lake. Can you guys give us a brief dialect on what Nuclear Lake is for the beginning?
Go for it, Bri.
Seriously? Okay.
Yeah, go for it. Go ahead.
Okay. So there's a large piece of land out of in upstate New York, and back, I believe it was in the 70s, United Nuclear Corporation got exclusive permission from the United States government to work with weapons-grade material to try to come up with some kind of engine. And they wouldn't be specific with it, but I'm assuming that if you're working with nuclear material or highly radioactive material, you're talking about a nuclear engine, or who knows, but that like Star Trek type of stuff for way back when. And there's a huge lake on there. It's about a mile long or a mile and a half long. And they had an accident, and there was an explosion. There was a fire. Some people got killed, and they got shut down up there. And they supposedly cleaned it up. The U.S. government said they cleaned it up, but even if you do research today, it's like a cancer cluster around there. But this area has been an area of high strangeness for hundreds of years. It goes back to the Native Americans even talking about it. And it is a very beautiful place, but it's a very strange place. And that's pretty much Nuclear Lake in a nutshell.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a very creepy place, and I mean the tragic, and now we know where it gets its name from the fire. That's it seems like a very scary place, especially when you have a name called Nuclear Lake, and it's remote for dogman activity. And in dogman activity, but before we even discuss Nuclear Lake further about that, have you guys had your own fair share of encounters, and if so, feel free to showcase them.
All you, Al.
Okay, well, the very first encounter I had was 5 o'clock in the morning on the Parkway. I was on the Taconic Parkway going to work, and I'll make this short because I know it's a short show. But I seen 4 sets of eyes coming out of the woods. To me, they were amber-looking eyes. They were up around the 7-8 foot mark, and I seen them coming out of the woods. And I was the only guy on the Parkway, so I slowed down to basically a stop in the middle of the Parkway, and I pulled the window down on the Jeep, and I'm looking at them. And as these things are coming out of the woods, there you could see that their heads were bobbing up and down, almost like a horse's neck would bob up and down. And I was locked in on them. And then when they noticed me, they started running towards me. They dropped down all 4 and started running across the meadow towards my car. And again, I'm sitting there watching these things running towards me. And it took me a minute or two before I said, "Hey, let's get the hell out of here," and I punched the car out, and I pulled the window up, and I just started pulling away. And as I was pulling away from these creatures, I seen them both drop down. I mean, they stopped running, and they put their heads down to the ground like they had caught a scent trail or something. And they both turned, and they both ran north up the parkway. And that was my first experience. And I didn't tell anybody about it because I really didn't know what the hell they were at first, because I thought they were Sasquatches until they dropped down to all fours. And then eventually I mentioned it to Bryan, and Bryan's like, "Ah, you know what that was. You were locked in. They had you in your gaze, and they were watching you, and they had you locked in." And he says, "You got to go back. You got to investigate this place." And then for 3 days there was a truck there from the Department of Environmental Agency was parked there on the side, and then I went back into the woods, and I actually measured the trees, and what I thought was like 7 foot tall turned out to be closer to like 10 foot tall. And I started walking through the woods, and I found a stream that was stocked with trout, that the state stocks with trout. And then behind the stream there was a swamp, and behind the swamp there was a cornfield, and there was so much food for these creatures back there, which I thought there was just a small patch of woods in that area. I didn't think there was a lot of woods for anything to really be in until I actually went back there and started investigating. And that was my first encounter with them. And it was pretty wild, to just me in the middle of the parkway, all of a sudden these two things charging at you, and they were coming.
Yeah. And it doesn't end there, because tell them about the house.
My house?
Well, not that long. It wasn't really much after that.
Oh, yeah. A little while after that, we went to Nuclear Lake, where I was being drawn to Nuclear Lake, where we got the bluff charge, and we found the den. And in the den, we found a canine dogman's head in there. We found one that looked like a hyena's head. And to the right of that, there was like 3 little Sasquatches or monkeys, and they were all in the den together. And I don't know if the Sasquatches were interbreeding with the Sasquatches, or the 3 Sasquatches were lunch. I don't know. But after we found that den, I had an encounter at my house. One night I was sleeping in my bed, and I'm from the city, so I don't ever leave my windows open because my bedroom was on the first floor. But that night I left the bedroom window open, and I woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I felt like there was something outside the bedroom, and I didn't know what it was. And I went to look out the bedroom window, and I couldn't see anything. And but I could just get in the vibe that something was sniffing in the bedroom. And then my cat that was laying on a bed jumped up off the bed and ran upstairs. She caught a whiff of something. So I locked the bedroom window, and I was going out to the kitchen to put on the patio lights to see what was out in the patio. And something told me, "Don't put those lights on tonight. You don't want to see what's out there, because if you see what's out there, you're never going to get it out of your head." So I decided not to go and put the floodlights on in the backyard, and just went back to bed and let bygones be bygones. The next day I went in the backyard to check for footprints, and I found claw marks in the dirt underneath my bedroom window. And then a few days after that, I was packing my car to go to work 5 o'clock in the morning. I was bringing my travel bag to throw in my car, start the car up to warm it up, and I seen that looked like a shadow underneath my front deck. And I didn't know what the hell it was, and I was like, "What's under my front deck?" And I always go out with a little pocket knife and a can of pepper spray, because every now and then I run into a pack of wild dogs on garbage day, and I want to get mauled. So I pull out my little pocket knife and my pepper spray, and I'm walking towards what's under my front deck. And as I'm getting closer to the front deck, I see this 7-foot shadow. And it looked like, I don't know what it looked like, but it looked like it was standing upright, and it looked like it had a lion's mane. And then something said, "You should stop like right here and start to back away." And as I started to back away from the garage, from the deck, I couldn't see underneath the deck because the floodlights are on the deck, and they were pointing on me. They were blinding me. So I went into the house, and I said, should I take the shotgun out and go back under there? And then I said no, because I guess my gut told me that this thing was like a dog man. And I said, it never ends well when someone goes to war with these creatures. So I chose not to. But when I went back out to the front, I brought my tactical flashlight with me so I could see underneath the deck. And when I did that, there was nothing under the deck. So I went to check under the deck and get a better look. And the thing had urinated all over my new retaining wall. I just had a retaining wall built that summer. And that morning, I had fed our outside cat through the sliding glass door, and the sliding glass door worked great. I shut the sliding glass door. I go to work. I get to work. My wife calls me. She's freaking out. The sliding glass door almost fell on her head when she went to open it up to feed the cat. And I was like, "What are you talking about? I fed the cat earlier when I got up, and the sliding glass door worked great." When I got home that night, the sliding glass door was off the track. Now, I don't know if this creature had gone around the back of the house and tried to pop the sliding glass door off the track to get in. All I know is the next day I had to take the whole door off the frame and relay the track and reset everything up. Good thing that this particular door has a couple of different locks on it that they couldn't pop it up. But I think while I was in the front looking under the deck that it hit me, gone around the back to try to mess with us. And, I think that was its way of telling me, you know where I live and I know where you live, and let's leave it at that.
Yep. And roughly around when we had that encounter, it wasn't that long after, I was actually going down to Delaware to my cousin's house for Thanksgiving, and the hotel we normally stay at was booked solid. We planned this very late, so we found a little hotel or a motel, whatever it is, in just over the border in Maryland. And we were on the first floor, and I'm there with my wife and 2 kids, and you can't smoke in the room, and you can't smoke anything on the property, so you have to go out to the front. And we were really fairly close by to the side entrance, so we walked outside and we smoked cigarettes, and it's very secluded back there. If you stand there, it's on a grade of about 6 foot grade. But there's woods that surround you, and there was this one patch of woods that I was looking through, and it seemed to be like there was a very large archway going through, like almost like a path, not like a game trail, like something keeps going through it. And there are train tracks back there too. So I'd go out there, smoke a cigarette, come back in the room. My wife would go smoke a cigarette, and we stayed there for 3 nights. And the first night I went out there, I kind of got this like, this vibe that something's not right. It's kind of creepy. I saw these, what looked like 2 amber eyes, but big ones in the distance through the woods. And I'm like, okay, what the hell is that? Maybe it's a light post or what have you. And I said to myself, wow, this is really squatchy. And, dogman-y, but squatchy type of like feel. So smoke my cigarette, come back inside, smoke, go back out like a couple hours later, have another cigarette. And the last time I went out that night, about closer to 12 midnight, just started getting like, I call them the willies, but, I was getting like goosebumps. Something wasn't right. And I kind of got nervous, and I just went in, I packed it in for the night. So the next day, being who I am and how I always am pretty much investigating, I just by chance, I forgot the name of the town right off the, it's not in the top of my head right now, but I kind of Googled werewolves or Bigfoots or paranormal in this area. And lo and behold, there was a werewolf sighting not that far from where this hotel's location is. So I started looking up, and basically a family was coming back on one of the dirt, back roads by their farm. And there was a werewolf that they came across an animal in the middle of the field, like almost like eating a deer. And this thing stood up and it had the head of a werewolf. They described it as a werewolf. And they hauled ass out of there. So knowing that, later that night, I'll go outside for a smoke, and I just get this. I start hearing things creeping around in the woods when something's walking, almost like an animal, but this was bigger, and it's walking straight at me on the 12 o'clock position. And Looking. I'm using my high intensity flashlight. I don't see anything. Every time I turn the light on, the movement stops. But I'm getting this really strange vibe, like this is not cool, this is not good. Go back in the room, come back out again. But the third time I came out, I've had enough. Something wasn't right, because whatever was coming forward at me on a 12 o'clock position, I also heard something to the right of me, almost creeping around. Now, if you know anything about these creatures, dogmen, they don't hunt solo, and they don't really do much solo. And that's my personal opinion from my own research. If you have one in front of you, you can bet the farm there's another one either creeping up behind you or to the right or left of you. This is how they operate. And I just got this terrible, my stomach started hurting. There was something not right about this. It actually freaked me out. I went back into the room, and I literally, I'm saying to myself, if this is a dogman creature, how the hell am I going to barricade myself in the room? It's going to come in if it wants to. But from that point forward, I didn't go out the side entrance to have a cigarette anymore. I actually went out the front, and and when I told my wife, I said, don't go out the side anymore, go to the front. Because you kind of can't explain to your wife and kids that there could be a potential 12-foot bipedal predator that will just rip you to shreds, just because you're going for a smoke. So she acted a little bit weird by it, but she abided by it. She went to the front, and later I just didn't go back. And then when I got back, I was telling Al this whole story, and that's when I found out, more about his visitation. And although I didn't physically see this creature, the sense that we're talking about when you go someplace and something's happening, or it's a presence, it's a pressure, it's an intensity in the atmosphere, that's what it was. And it was a fight or flight type of mentality, and I took off. I'm like, I'm not fighting this thing.
That is a pretty intense, both of you guys, pretty intense stories. I mean, honestly, that is probably one of the more dynamic stories we have. Mentioned a den with deceased dogman. Now, that's pretty interesting. I never heard of that one before. That's actually a first. A den of deceased, of beheaded dogmen, and then Sasquatch as well. For both of you guys with the dogman realm, and you mentioned, Bryan, about how they are not alone, they hunt in a pack. Do you guys feel that if these creatures definitely wanted to, they could easily kill somebody if they had the intention to? Do you feel that they have like a sense of mimicking or messing around with humans? Like, does that make any sense at all? Do you guys think that these creatures do have a tendency to mess with human beings?
I personally do. There's a lot of stories where. And I think it depends on the age of the actual creature we're talking about. Because I think there is a seniority level there, and then they have these juveniles or teenagers, and I'll classify it as teenager mentality. These are the ones I believe that are hanging out in the cemeteries. There's a lot of reports of sightings of them in cemeteries. These are the ones that like to mess around with you when you're sleeping. They'll ring the front doorbell and they'll go to the back door, and they'll ring the front and they'll go to the back door, and they'll shake the handle. I think they literally know exactly what will scare you, and I think they kind of get off on it. They know exactly what they are. They know that they're killing machines if they want to be, but I also think they like to, screw around with human nature. They're very curious. They will peek in your window. They'll snip in your window. And like Al said, if you try to go to war with these things, it's not going to work out. I've heard many stories, many people asking, well, what kind of weapon should I bring to the forest? I'm like, well, don't bring anything. And if you're going to bring anything, just make sure you have a machete with you. You don't want to go to war with something like this. It never turns out good. I mean, 10 out of 10 times, people go missing. And yes, I do think that at any point in time, they could have no problem about ripping you to shreds. The one thing that's curious, and I don't know if Al will address it in a minute, I find that it's almost like vampire-esque. They don't come into your home. They'll open the front door, but it's almost like you have to invite them in to get them to, to, to come in. In general, I don't think they're looking to get in or break into your home. I think they do things to scare you, though.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, Brian. I think they get off on scaring people. I think they know what pushes our buttons. I also believe that they're smart enough to know that, yeah, we're easy enough to kill. There's no doubt about it. When you're talking about something between 7 and 10 feet tall with claws on it, they could just shred us. But they also know that that's going to bring in more people with guns and dogs, and they're going to get hunted, and that, it may not be a good thing for them if they want to stay in that area. They'll just have to move on. So I think most of the times when they're out there terrorizing people, it's just an intimidation factor. Let's see how much we could scare this guy. You know what I mean? And not so much wanting to just kill people, because we're easy prey for them.
Yeah, and on top of that, if you take into consideration some of the Native American folklore about these creatures, some people say they're Wendigo. Some people, they'll mention a Dogman-esque type of character in the genre, but it's really interesting. I forgot who relayed the story to me, but there was someone going out there investigating, and a Dogman incident, and they literally told them they got a blessing from a Native American spiritual person, be a medicine man, and they said, "You're now a warrior, and do not bring a gun. Do not let them see your firearm. But you're welcome to carry a weapon like a knife or a blade. But don't let them see you. They don't fear the firearms; they fear the blades." And throughout history, the Native Americans have been dealing with these cryptids for, hundreds of years. They didn't have firearms way back when. What did they have? They had cold, hard steel, and they had, arrows. And if you think about it logically, when you shoot a firearm, depending on, most calibers that you have out there that it's accessible, even if you go hunting for moose have so much skin in front of them that the bullet sometimes just gets lodged there. It doesn't do any damage to them. There are tons of stories where dogmen are getting shot point blank, and it's like nothing's ever happened to them. And I would hope that if anybody listens to these dogmen stories, they don't aim point blank. There's other areas you should be aiming, like genitals, the snout, the eyes. It's not to kill this thing as much as it's to get your ass out of the location alive. But for some reason, when people bring out a machete or a knife, these things retreat very quickly, because even though the bullet can't penetrate them, with a machete, you can slice them in half very easily. And that's hard to come back from. So I think there's some kind of respect factor depending on who the individual is and what you're carrying into the situation.
I agree 100%. I mean, with a machete, it's interesting because a machete does manifest a certain, especially a brand new one. I mean, I've don't really necessarily use machete, but in the wakes of when I was much younger and used it as a portion of landscape, and people don't underestimate that it's a sharp weapon, and it could you could slice anything in half with it. You could slice a grapefruit, you could slice a piece of meat with it, and it's a pretty tough weapon. So gunning it through a dogman, it's a pretty interesting factor. With Nuclear Lake, have you guys had any other experiences with Nuclear Lake besides the dogmen or the beheaded dogmen and Sasquatch that you guys had seen?
Well, before we get into that, it wasn't anything beheaded. It's actually, we sent you those photos. If you look in the den and you look at it, you're going to see something that looks like a little mini German Shepherd for the most part. Looks like a pup. But to the left on the photo, there's a very large head there. And in that head, I see this huge, it's significantly larger to dwarf this small pup. Also, we were alerted to this, and this is what we do at Bronxville Paranormal is we'll have evidence, we'll review the evidence, and then a lot of times we go back 6 months later and re-review them with fresh eyes. We're big on fresh eyes because then you start catching something. Well, we didn't actually catch this at the time, and I'm very surprised by it, but in a couple of the darkened photos, I sent you the actual photo, and then there's one that there's a circle around it. You will see in that photo, there's this large, massive, and it kind of looks like a monkey, but a deformed monkey. So that's why I think we're leaning, Al, if I'm correct, to Dogman Type 3, variant over there in that den. But there's another one that you can clearly see the two eyes because you get the eye shine, you get the snout, and you see the ears. So there was no decapitated heads. But Al, you got to tell them about the last time you visited with the ladies.
Oh, well, that's not really a Dogman story, though.
No,
That's more a Bigfoot story. But no, and I agree with Brian. The night we got bluff charged, we heard whoops that, we had rocks thrown at us. And I don't mean just small rocks. I mean a rock the size of a bowling ball. And we heard something charge up the ridgeline. And we took photos. We had video. We had the thermal imager going. We had full spectrum. We had IR. And we didn't capture anything in anything. But we sent it out and we put it out there. And somebody, I think from California or someplace who's got better equipment than us, found what looks like a snout sniffing over this wall. And you see the head is almost like a blockhead, like a pit bull or something like that, with pointed ears and eyes and a nose. And I think what we thought was a regular Bigfoot doing the whoops and the tree knocks and the rock knocks was a Type 2 Dogman, because I believe that den was a Dogman den, and we were just 100 yards or so above the den on a ridgeline, and I think that's why it wanted us out of that area that night, because it tried its damnedest to get us out of there. But we held our ground and we stayed and we didn't leave. But when that person from California sent me my photo back with this image of this dog head sniffing over this stone wall in the middle of the woods, I went to the original image because I thought it was photoshopped. I went to the original image and I did some work on it, lightened it up and stuff. And sure as shit, the image was actually there on the first picture, but we didn't see it when we reviewed it the first time because it was so dark that it just absorbed the flash of the light from my flash into its coat, and you can't see it unless it's lightened up, and but it was there, and we never heard it leave. So we don't know what happened. We don't know how it left the area because we didn't hear it walk off. We didn't hear it jump and leave us. But we sure as shit heard it charging us up that ridge line. And it was coming. And we all drew our survival knives out and made like a triangle shape to protect ourselves because we didn't know what was coming over that ridge. But it never came over the stone wall. So I think it was a Type 2 Dogman. That's what I think it was when it's all said and done.
Absolutely, and that image, it's quite funny because I actually looked at that while we were discussing it. It's a very scary image. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I see the monkey one, and then I see the other one, and you could see the menacing kind of look on it when you take a close look at it, and it literally reminds you of the Onaway photograph, but from a farther distance. And it's a very scary photograph. That's that's one of the better pieces of evidence I've actually seen. And I'm not tooting the horn here because I have you two on my show. I'm just saying in general. I mean, it's in a closer view of it. It's staring directly dead at you, and it's looking at your every move. I mean, that is a very nervous feeling to be there face to face with such thing, wouldn't you think?
Well, we didn't at the time. I don't think we realized that we knew something was in the area, but we thought it retreated. When this first started, let me just give you a little color on it. We heard tree knocks from where we were set up. These chairs. We heard tree knocks across the lake. We heard wood knocks, and we got the whoops by us. And I basically thought, my opinion was that the whoops there, and it was three of us there, and we got three whoops. That was a scout that was sent ahead because they knew that somebody was there. And that was telling whoever it was, part of their clan or their tribe, don't come. There's three of them. Go the other way. And I think as the night progressed, they wanted to see who these three people that didn't, take the bluff charge and didn't take the rock, the boulder being thrown at you, and stood their ground. Like, who are these people? There was nothing menacing to it. It was very intense. I got to be honest. It was was pucker worthy, as I like to say. but the minute that the whoops came and the last straw, I think, was the rock being thrown, and that knocked me out of my chair because it was at me. Al was in the safest spot actually that night, and I'm going to sit right next to Al next time. I think it realized either these people are crazy or they're could be dangerous for us. Let's just see where we are and what's going on and how long they're going to be here. Had we known that that thing was staring at us at the time, I don't think we would have spent another couple of hours there in the woods. I got to be honest, and I'm just going to say before you get on, Al, yeah, we do investigate this stuff, okay? And we're very interested in it, but there's a healthy respect and there's a reality factor. You can't be stupid about these things, and there's a scare factor. And I'll be the first one to admit it. I don't care if, it got scary at one point. But it's a type of scary where there's no place to go, no place to run. And it's like, I'm not going to go out, crying. I'm going to go out swinging. So it was intense. Had I known that creature was staring at us at that point, after what we've been through, that would have been an interesting afterthought. I don't know what we would have done. Sorry, Al.
And I'll tell you, Chris, when we heard that thing charge up the ridgeline, in my mind, it was either a black bear or a mountain lion. And I really seen it hitting that stone wall and jumping over that wall onto one of us. When it got to that wall and it stopped and nothing came across, we stood there. And I took that photograph, and we had all the cameras and everything going, and we was filming with the regular camera as well. And we stood there like dumbfounded for like 5 minutes. It's just saying, what the hell just happened? Something came charging up the ridge, but didn't come over the wall. But then we never heard it left. And at that point, Bill, our cameraman, had 1,000 luma flashlight that lit up the woods like daytime. We jumped over the wall where that creature was, and we ran to the other side of the ridge, and we shined that light into the swamp, and we lit that swamp up like it was daytime, and we never seen anything. So from the time that thing was there looking at us from the other side of the wall to the time we decided to go over that wall to see what came charging up, it left, but we never heard it leave. And I know these things can jump 40 feet in a single bound and all that, but you got to remember, this is the fall. It's Halloween. There's a lot of leaf litter on the ground. You would have heard it hit the ground at some point, or maybe it went up a tree. I don't know. It was mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, you got to understand, it's pitch black. I mean, seriously, if you shut those lights off, we shut every light off. You couldn't see the people in front of you. I mean, you couldn't see more than a foot in front of your face. So how is something that large and massive? And let me tell you something. It was big. Moves from point A to about 1.5 miles away, point B, in under 2 seconds without, poking its eye out or it's not possible. So something was very, very strange that night.
Almost certainly. I would be creeped out myself, especially. Before we get things going wrapped up on the show, I just want to say, too, you guys have had an extensive amount of research on this topic, and I want to ask you guys both, I mean, what is your official intake, your official opinion on these creatures? I mean, what is your official analysis or theory on them? If you guys have one, definitely, I would love to hear.
Well, I mean, I researched these things back to ancient Greece, where the Greeks called them likings, and the liking translates into wolfman. So they've been around since ancient times, and I guess they've been all over the world. I don't know. I mean, I have to believe that it's a flesh and blood creature that is here. But where it goes and how come people haven't seen it or they can't find it, I don't know. It's just mind-boggling. Bri?
In researching this and the paranormal and as we say, goblin universe, And I'm going to throw that plug in there. Uh, you know, I've always noticed that if you look at the different sea charts throughout history, different areas have them separated by thousands of miles, 10,000 miles. Cultures not even aware of the other cultures. You will always see like a giant octopus, or you'll hear about some kind of fairy and some kind of attack animal and some kind of bipedal creature. This is throughout time. And I think there's some credence to that. And I think it's not just a fable or a fairy tale told by the Grimm brothers. It's real. It's out there. The problem you have is there's more evidence now currently for Sasquatch, Bigfoot, because there's more video, there's more audio, there's more footprints for this particular cryptid than there is actually for the Dogman. And some people are getting some great evidence. Some people getting great video, but this thing always remains very elusive. And there's nothing definitive there, but there's something there. And I can't put my finger on it, but I thoroughly believe this creature has existed not only within our lands, but globally, because there's reports of these things globally everywhere. I don't think you need evidence or a creature ripping somebody's head off to know that something's going on. We don't need another Land Between the Lakes episode. But I think we do need some more evidence. And I think, believe it or not, the government knows a lot more than they're talking about, specifically about these creatures and cryptids and what they're doing with them. I have no idea, but I don't think it's anything good.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that as well, especially before we also do close out. I know I just said that twice. Would you guys feel free to showcase or promote or advertise whatever you guys wish of what you guys do? The floor is all you.
That's you, Bri.
No, please. You start first.
Okay, well, you could find Bryan or myself at the Bronxville Paranormal Society. We do have a webpage, and we're on all social media. Bryan's got us on every single piece of social media that you can find. Yep. We're also, Bryan likes to volunteer me for a lot of stuff, so we're also co-directors of the New York State, the North American Dogman Project, New York State chapter, along with co-directors of the New York State UFO Project. And again, you can find us on any of the social media feeds.
Yeah, I always volunteer him for things. I volunteer for a lot of stuff. One day he's going to kill me. He's just going to volunteer me for like the military. But part of this stuff that we do between Bronxville Paranormal, which covers everything, mind you, and the North American Dogman Project, which was a no-brainer for us being in New York State, because we get to do a lot. Not only within the state, but also tri-state-wise. They didn't have anybody, so we joined up. We're going to do it anyhow. We might as well just, be part of something, share our evidence, which we always do. But one of the things we did with the New York State UFO Project, we realized that there are plenty of people out there that are having experiences, not only UFO-related, but paranormal-related, be it Dogman, be it Bigfoot, be it ghosts, be it whatever, that are scared out of their minds. They're frightened. They don't know what's going on. And we created a forum for them to, come in and be with like-minded individuals and allow them to get it off their chest. Don't let the title fool you. We do everything. We have a new meeting coming up this August 16th. It's Thursday at the Hastings on the Hudson Library. It starts at 6 or 6:30, goes to about 8. And then after that, we do like sky watches. We have some chats, and sometimes we do CE5s, which is close encounter of the fifth kind, where it's an active encounter. We're trying to actively contact whatever is up in the skies. We've been very successful with that. And other than that, I do have a radio show that's on there. It's called Nobo Boomy, where we go deep inside the Goblin universe, and I'm the host. It's on Podbean. InsideTheGoblinUniverse.podbean.com. It's also on InsideTheGoblinUniverse.com, NobleBooming.com, and like with BPS, any place you look for a podcast, including iTunes, iHeart, you name it, It's on there. It does paranormal, but we also do a little entertainment based and anything that's current events or topical. And we're doing some stuff for the BPS. We're going to do hopefully we're going to start doing a monthly show. We're going to do a little wrap up of everything that we're doing to get people out there aware of what's going on. And that's pretty much it. Whenever we get a chance to go out, hopefully we're going out actually tomorrow, weather permitting.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, go ahead, Al. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say we always try to stay busy. That's all I was going to say.
Absolutely, guys. Busy is more important, especially in this field. I want to thank you guys again for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
Well, gentlemen, of course, you guys have a fantastic evening. Stay safe.
Good night, Chris.
And have a great good night.
Ciao.